Christy, could you shut the doors, please?
Just squeeze. Squeeze. She probably had to go. Remember when you had the screws?
You know, my dad can even big
You got thinking something.
United Methodist churches. We're not like them. They're swimming, and I was like, ah!
Surprised Matt didn't go.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started so we can get people out of here. I have this panel here that have been part of small groups, run small groups, have ran small groups, currently running small groups, so a wide variety of experience here. So I just want to start off, Ron and Sean ran a successful small group before they moved. And can you guys just talk about how that came about, what your cadence was like, what your material was like? Just give us a brief overview of what your small group was.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I've had a desire to be in small group and actually share. I feel it's a very important part of a church as a church grows, and the reason for that is we come to church on Sunday morning, we hear the pastor preach to us, instruct us, and we worship. But then we leave and we go into our own homes. We deal with the things that are in our families. We deal with the things that are happening in our environment. And sometimes, and the pastor can't reach everybody every Sunday. It's impossible. So what a small group, in the way I feel about small groups, it allows you to do life with someone that has a similar interest. Now, I've heard also people say, well, I don't want to become a part of a clique. And they're afraid of those things. But really, a small group becomes a part of your family. And it should. You should be able to share things that you can't share. It's just impossible to share with the whole church community. But you might be able to share this with a small nucleus of people that have similar interests in you. And when I say similar interests, we look around here, this group of people that's here. There's some younger, there's some older. So small groups may take a wide variety of people, interests, activities. So there's a lot of things that you can do. Small group is not Bible study, okay? That's not what it is. Small group is doing life with people close to you. That's why I love it. When we did have a small group here at church, we started with one, they branched out. I think when Sean and I moved to Texas, we had five groups that was running simultaneously in a small church like this. I thought that was pretty good. But I think it's really for the whole church family.
Thank you. Kate, what do you think what are some examples of a cadence and location for a small group?
I think it depends on the group. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all way to do small groups. I think it depends on the people that you have in there and their interests and where they're at in their life. I think when you throw in young families with kids. They do not have the same options, I think, as somebody that maybe that their kids are now out of the house, or maybe they don't have children, or maybe they're single. All of those different things play an impact on what you do and how you do it and where you do it and even when you do it. So I think while I do believe that small groups can be done without segmenting individuals into groups, I think that at least in my experience, when you get people that are in similar stages of life or are in need of similar needs, then it makes the logistics of a small group a little bit easier. But the key and the hard part is meeting the needs of everybody. And unfortunately, that's just very, very difficult, especially with kids' schedules and stuff like that. But I think you have to take into consideration the people that you have in your group.
Yeah. So for example, the group that Kate and I are in, we do about once a month. Ron and Sean, I think you were about once a month also. Kathy, is that your experience also? About once a month getting together?
And it truly was not enough.
Yeah.
It was not enough. And they have to be consistent once you start your groups. They have to be consistent. People have to know that you're going to be meeting at this time every time.
Yeah, it's important to have that already set so people can know and it's not a big surprise when small groups come up. Kathy, what qualities or skills do you think are important for a small group leader? Or anyone?
Me personally, so I have always felt a need to join people together. I love people. I love people to see people interacting. I am a firm believer you cannot do life on your own. We need one another. And to open your house and invite people in, that in itself is, I think it's a dying art, really. It's being lost. But Ronnie is right. Doing life together is important. And I think if you have a want-to and a means to do it, you can put it together. It's prayerfully done. My personal experience, it's been prayerfully done. And let the Lord lead you in setting those up.
So I'm not hearing that you don't have to have like great leadership skills, you don't have to be super organized, you just have to have a heart to get people together, which,
And to open your doors,
Yeah.
or to find a meeting place to do that.
yeah. Okay, so Ron, what challenges have you faced as a small group leader and how did you overcome them? And Sean, because you guys ran that together, so.
Well, some of the challenges that you have is, of course, personalities. Everyone in this room right now has a different personality. So you have to deal with different personalities. One person is not better than another, one person. So you may have a person that's an introvert that they don't want to respond to. They're hesitant to be forthcoming, sharing their life because they are introverted. So one of the things you have to do is challenge is to bring that person into the group. You need to be able to do that. It's very important. That's why they're there. There's something they're seeking, and if they're hesitant to share that, then you've got to sense that and kind of bring them. On the other hand, you have the person that won't shut up. Then you've got to be able to kind of direct the flow so that they're not like me talking all the time. Wait.
So what are you discussing at your small group?
I'm sorry?
What are you discussing at your small group where you might want to encourage
Okay.
someone or discourage someone maybe to let others talk?
What you want to discuss?
Yeah.
Well, like I said, it's not a Bible study, but there are certain things you can do. You can discuss life challenges. Let's take, if you're a younger group, like when I say Katie, she's younger than I am by a lot. She has family, so she's going to be interested in what happens to people similar, that have similar situations that she has. Then you take middle-aged people that they have different interests. Then you take people like Sean and I are empty nesters, and we're concerned about our lifestyle. So you try to find things to discuss. Other things is, in the last small group I was in, we took about 15, 20 minutes, and we actually discussed the pastor's sermon from the previous Sunday. So that we really got to know what he was preaching. We didn't take the whole small group to do that, but we would take a little bit of time every week, usually closed right before we took prayer requests. We would discuss the pastor's sermon. Sometimes it got a little bit more involved, sometimes it was less involved. That was just one thing. You can do anything. As Kathy was talking about, they had a hiking small group. They would go on a hike together. So it depends on the interest too. But those are some of the things we did.
Okay. Kate, what strategies or resources do you use in our Bible study that makes it engaging and relevant and applicable to their lives?
Yeah, so we run ours a little bit differently. We had such a, it's funny because I didn't even know, I knew what I had envisioned, maybe myself even, or what I felt like God was leading me to do, but until I actually got in the room and did kind of a town hall meeting with the ladies that were there, I didn't realize what we had in common even more than the demographics. It was more about like psychographics. Where are we at and what are we thinking about? What are we worried about? What are we praying about? And what do we have in common, but also where we're at in our spiritual walk. And so that first meeting, and Chelsea was there too, and so she remembers that first meeting when we all sat down, I realized that I had a much different group than I thought I did. That they needed things that I would have bypassed. I would have said, okay, well, you've been here, for 2 years, or maybe you grew up in church. We're going to skip all the basics, and we're going to go, when we do our kind of Bible study time, we're going to go to a much higher level, because I thought that's what they wanted, just because I thought I knew them. And this isn't harping on anybody. I needed it too, but I realized that what they were really longing for, it was almost like they had skipped the basics for us. And so I realized that for that specific group, Bible study was so important, and I didn't want to neglect that too. So what we decided to do was offer Bible study during the month, you know what I mean? Like they could do it on their own, and then there was a massive part of our time together that we would go over that study. So kind of hop around. We've done a couple different books and some really, really great studies. Daily Grace Co. was one that we found like really just hit home, and we loved everything that we were doing. The best study that I've ever done on worship. And so I think that's a great source. But I think going to Pastor Baker or maybe to Andy even and asking, are there any kind of books that we can read together? If you do decide to make this more of a Bible study, also with the cell group. Because as much as what Ronnie's talking about, like really working together and living life together is important, you also want to make sure that whoever you brought in is also being fed. And so giving them resources to do that is important. But my biggest takeaway was that you have to ask. You cannot assume, because there were people in the group that I thought, okay, well, check, check, check. And it turned out that they were really looking for accountability, and they were looking to get back to the basics. And that really helped, I think, our group grow together on the same, we all had from the get-go the same foundation, and were able to grow together and bond in that way.
Yeah. Speaking of accountability, Kathy, how do you encourage accountability and support, like getting people to really, show up, that they don't flake on you every time? How do you encourage that?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to really talk about, you don't talk about what's been discussed in the group, what is discussed there stays there. But I think the noising abroad that these are such a help, not only to people personally, but it's also a help to the church. bringing the body together. But you can't force somebody to come. You might have church I just came from, they have a huge, it's like 2,500 people when they decided to do the groups. And they had a bunch of people sign up that they wanted to open up. And I think they only ended up being like 10 or 15 of them. So everybody is anxious to do it and really wants to do it. But when it comes down to it, you know, I think people are scared and they shouldn't be afraid to do these. It's just being a part of a body of Christ. And I heard before this meeting started, they opened the doors and there's kids and people out there talking and laughing and they leave and you don't see them again until next Sunday. You can do that at these, you can build relationships with these people that you go to church with and see once or twice a week. But I want to say something. When we were doing our groups, these are the people that my husband and I have bonded with at that time and still are bonded with. And we have a relationship to this day. And they were in Texas and I was in Montana, but you know what? When we needed each other, we called. We called. So it's so important to the body to have these groups. And I had a minister say one time, it gets people out of the pews and into a circle. If you can picture that. And then you can do life together that way.
Yeah, I really like that. That's because, like what Ronnie was saying, you know, as our church grows, you know, we can't know the needs of every single person, and that's why it's so important to find that core group that can know your needs and can be there for you. Sean, what is a good number for a small group? How many people is that sweet spot? Your mic.
Actually,
Your mic.
a good small group.
Ron, can you use your mic?
Sorry about that. A good, it should be probably 10, no more than 12, you know, and actually probably a really good size small group would be around 8 to 10. When you get bigger than that, people that are, as I was talking before, if they're introverted a lot, the bigger the group, the less they want to say.
Because everybody else is talking.
Yeah, so you try to keep the group intimate enough that they feel part. If you get too big, they lose that feeling of connectivity. So you want to keep it probably 8 to 10 is a good size group. Beyond that, you're going to have trouble.
Okay, and this is for all of you. How do you find people to be in your small group? Because I know we don't just want people that we know. We want to, you know, get to know people that are not in our regular circle. How do we approach them? How do we find these people when our church is the size that it is?
The area. Gotta work the area.
Use your mic.
You want to answer?
So the important thing is to aim for the people that are in your area or where you plan on meeting. I think that to me, that is my right, Ron. You want to go to those people and let them know that, hey, I'm getting ready to start a group up, and we're meeting at such and such. You know, would you be interested? So you have to go looking.
I think location is big. I totally agree. I think praying about it is definitely your number one. But and I can only speak from my own experience, but when I was in that stage of building the small group, it was important, and this is the way my brain works, but to be a little bit strategic about who I brought in also. because there were a certain handful of people that I really wanted to reach, because I felt like, okay, those are the ones that God is pulling me towards. And we've checked those boxes, you know what I mean? Like that happened and it came to fruition. But I thought, okay, well, I need to enlist help because I certainly am not capable of doing this all on my own. And so on top of the people that I felt like God called me to reach, I thought, who is well equipped, who has the spiritual gifts to help me out here? And so I also reached out to people that I knew would back me up in the group. And I'm not talking about like Kate's right or Kate's the best. I'm talking about they're going to be able to see that somebody is also very introverted or very quiet, or maybe it feels like, okay, they're not catching on, or they're not in tune, or they have more questions, because I knew that I didn't have the capacity even to reach all 8 as much as I wanted. And so I knew that I wanted to strategically pick people who have the personality and that spiritual gift to reach out and say, hey, I'm going to connect with you because I can see where you're at, because I knew I couldn't do it myself. So one of my biggest advice in terms of like the logistics of who's bringing in the group, yes, pray about it. Yes, figure out who you want in your group, and then pick a partner. Or maybe, I think when I started, I had 2 partners that I knew I could count on. They were going to show up. They were going to give it 110%. They were going to back me up. They were going to do what I'd asked them to do, and they were going to be there for me. And it actually, I think, it really, really worked with the people that I did not know very well that were in the small group. So I would say location, but also being strategic about your personality types to help you out.
Ron, Sean, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's probably the closest thing. I was just thinking, we were talking, and I'm looking around, and I probably at the end we would want to find out what the people that are here, what their interest is real quickly, because they may be here thinking they're going to join today to get started, and we need to tell them we're going to get this right for them. But in answer to your question, I think location and probably the mindset of what the people are looking for are the 2 most important items.
All right, thanks. That's really good. Okay, let's see. Kate, you're really good at this. How do you encourage participation in the group? We've talked about people being introverted, and we have some of those in our group. You do a really great job of doing that. So can you walk us through how you do
Yeah,
that?
I mean, I think there's a couple maybe tactics that I use, but I am not afraid to sit and be quiet. And I think that's probably, and we've probably all experienced it, where that social anxiety of I just posed a question and nobody's answering, so I'm just going to fill the void and I'm going to talk. And if I did that, there were probably days where I would talk the whole time, and I'm good. But it's asking a question or posing something and then blank staring, and that takes practice. And some of you probably already do it at work or with your spouse or whatever, where you're like, I asked and I'm going to wait until I get an answer to your kids. But it's kind of like that in small group, and let their social anxiety do the work. You know what I mean? Let them suffer and sweat, and then eventually they ask. But I also think it's about finding topics and stuff that they are interested in. So I think that it's important to have small conversations before and small conversations after with each individual, because they may have something that's heavy on their heart that was not at all what you had planned, and knowing what they want to talk about ahead of time, you can find a way to incorporate that into what's going on until they feel comfortable enough where I feel like that kind of fades away because they've become so comfortable with the group, which is the intention.
Yeah. And speaking of location, I know that some people meet at houses, sometimes people meet at the church, you can meet at a coffee shop, and I have a hospitality brain, so for us, we will do food, people just bring a light snack. Is that normally what you guys have done, is food? I mean, maybe not the hiking one, you didn't bring food, but that social aspect, I think it's easy for people to come around food and talk, but is that what you guys normally do in your groups?
So what we would do is people would bring in, if they wanted to bring something, they could. We would spend about 20 minutes or so eating and just interacting with one another. And then we would break and start the group. And I've seen groups where they don't have anything. It's just, your preference on how you want to see the groups go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it made it really nice. I mean, come in and,
Yeah, it can be a low lift with just coffee, or, something where, it's more entailed, where you guys have a theme, maybe, I don't know, Taco Tuesday night. So I want to turn over to you guys, if anyone has any questions that you want to ask the group while they're here. I've gone through my list, but I'm sure that maybe somebody has a question. Raise your hand and ask. This is that social anxiety thing. All right.
So you guys all have different backgrounds and different experiences with your small groups. I know Kate's is all women and they're following a book. And Kathy talked about a big group of people who had like 6 at a table, and that table became your discussion group every week. And then you guys had one group that met at home over years. So those look very different in my mind. I mean, I get the fellowship part of it, but that's all very different. And so I wonder if that was, do you see those as different? And how do you pick which kind you're going to do? And how's that work?
Again, I think it's the people that you have in the group and what their interests are. And that takes you putting pride aside, thinking that you know what you want to do, and asking them. And really getting to know what their interests are. The very first meeting that we had, that pretty much was the whole thing, was figuring out what they wanted to do. And I call those kind of town hall meetings, where it's like, okay, I break it up into sections, and what do you want? What do you want to get out of it? And so you really get them to pour out what they're looking for, and I can promise you, you will be surprised. Because we had people that wanted to lean more into parenting, we had people that were interested in getting down to the basics, they had people that truly just wanted friendship, and we were not all on the same page in terms of what we were looking to get out of it. So then, once I had the info, I came back and I sat down with my core folks and figured out, okay, how are we going to be able to meet the needs as much as we possibly can in this group. And for us, it landed on, okay, they need fed spiritually in a way that is at the level that they want to start at. And so we kind of had to go back and then work our way up while mixing in a lot of fun conversation. But the women that I ended up having, and the reason why I brought them in was because I saw that they were kind of isolated and happened to be in the same part of life as I was. And so I thought, okay, loneliness, doctors are saying it, this is one of the biggest things that we're challenged with as a human race. If it's here in the earth, then it's here in church. And so these women were isolated. I saw that they weren't really connecting or making, really fellowshipping outside of their own families. And I thought, okay, I'm going to extract from here and here and here and here and combine them so that they feel like they have true friendships out of their own family. And then I realized, okay, it turns out that they weren't where I thought they were in terms of biblical knowledge, which is fine, because that means we get to go back and we get to really, really become very, very founded in our faith, and know that we can do that together, and that there was no shame in that. So for me, it was, I went that route because it was who God gave me. But I think that would be different for everybody, depending on the group that God gives you.
Well, in the last group that in the church that I was in, that we in Texas that we formed, we picked one given night, and in the gym, what we did was we drew circles in different locations in the gym, and in that circle, we picked who the facilitator would be in that circle. And that facilitator would have an idea of what his group was going to do, and then we invited people then from the church family to come, and they could walk around and talk to the facilitators to find out what they were interested in, what they thought they were gonna, how they were gonna lead their particular group, and then they would choose which group they'd like to be a part of. If it was just a small family, if it was seniors, if it was singles, if it was divorcees, that people that had been married were divorced. There were different facilitators for different areas, and people got to choose where they wanted to go. Like here tonight, today, are you all wanting to be members or facilitators, leaders? Have you thought about that? What you want to do? Because you probably have an idea, well, maybe I just want to be a member of a group. Well, this allows you to walk around and decide, or if you want to be a facilitator, meaning you want to have your own small group, then you can talk to Chelsea or one of the people and say, I want to be the one that's in the circle, and let them come to me and I'll tell them what my vision is. And those are that way you gather people, and it works really well that way. Because right now, probably all of us here today don't know which way we're going to go. But we want to be a part of a small group. Do you want to be a part of a small group? That's why you're here, you have an interest in that, but you don't know which way you want to go. So to me, that's our next step, is to get the church involved and pick a time.
I like that idea.
Yeah, to kind of segue off of you, we have those surveys that were done.
Yes.
Do we have data?
Yes.
Like, do we know what our members want?
Yes.
Can we talk?
Yes.
I will lead. But because in the churches that I had, there was like a roster. And it was like, if you were interested in new family, you talk to this person. If you were interested in marriage help, you talk to this person. On and on and on and on. And it was all kinds of groups. And some people did multiple, because we want to keep it small and intimate, and realistically speaking, some of these groups could be quite large, so then they would divide those into different subgroups, right? So I think something like that, kind of combining all, like Kate's, how it happened with you was just a God thing. And then with you guys' experience, having it more organized, almost like a corporate structure type of deal. But if we have the research and the data, and then we can really kind of get a better understanding of what our church needs. And then do like what Ronnie said, reach out to those people who are willing to lead, and then open it up to the group and say, okay, where do you guys want to go? Or what do you guys want to participate in?
From what I understand with the surveys, a big part of it was people want fellowship. They want to be together. I think some people just kind of need a little guidance on how to actually do that outside of something being organized for them.
So fellowship was an overarching interest in every aspect, but specific to small groups, there was questions.
Yes.
What topics do you want? And there is data to support what the groups will do. So I don't know it off the top of my head anymore.
So what you just said is fellowship, and again, doing life together. We cannot walk by ourselves. We do better when we have one another. And that's how you find fellowship, is through these small groups. I'm a firm believer in it. And they're very important to the body.
Well, you can always open the door with a topic. And the interest starts with, this group is interested in.
There was marriage, parenting, spiritual gifts, end times, biblical ethics.
So you spend 20, 30
Right.
minutes on that, because that's the common interest, and you have your fellowship after that. I mean, that's one way.
Right, yeah. But Hallie, you're right, like the data overall from everything on the survey, what we learned was that people wanted to connect. And so that we have covered, and I think we understand the why behind it. That we have covered. It's how I think as a church we'd like to organize it, and if that's not something that is more of a corporate thing, doing it and equipping you to be able to start something on your own. But yeah.
Any other questions?
We all want to hear it. No, we all want to hear it.
Ellen, so we just be part of the group. Sorry. But, so I like what Ron said. I guess my question is, after hearing all this, how will you facilitate breaking us into small groups? I mean, with our interest. I did not do a survey.
Yeah.
So nobody knows me other than small. And I guess that's part of the reason I'm here too, because I've been attending 2 to 3 years now, and like I was telling Carrie, I just met her, and I feel like I don't know a whole lot of people any more than the first day I came.
Yeah.
And that's my fault. I'm not going to read them, you know, but me. But I think that's why small group would be good for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course, I wouldn't want to be in a group with small kids either, because small kids are all gone, so that wouldn't be my interest. So
You're not
my
interested in
question-
screaming kids.
I love it with my grandkids for sure, but just how you do break this up and form a small group is my question and why I'm here.
I think the first thing would be is if you're interested in starting a group, that we have a contact person that you would give your name to, or a contact person that you would say, you know, if a group forms in this area, I would like to be a part of it, just so we kind of know.
Can we schedule, would it be okay if we scheduled kind of a follow-up, maybe in a couple weeks? And then what we do is we invite anybody that wants to be interested or leading one, and we work out the organizational piece, like location and like a follow-up now that we've kind of got some more information, but we can get with Pastor Baker and see how he wants to organize it. Would that be fair
Yeah,
to do?
I think that's a great idea. I think to just tell people go start a small group is, you know, sounds great, but some people, you know, are nervous to do that or don't know how to do that. So if it needs to be something where it's encouraged by the church as a whole, then yeah, we can definitely go that way. Do you have a question, Lynn?
No, I just like to sit in
Oh,
front
okay.
of I have one question. I had a church that I came from, we were not allowed to be, the original assignments came from the pastor. And then he did not allow a small group to meet longer than like a year and a half, because he did not want cliques forming. But if some only met once a month, that meant he only met 12 times. But so he extended it to the year and a half to 2 years at the most. So are we going into it looking at like that? I mean,
I don't know that we want to micromanage them. You know, we want to let them grow into, you know, the way God is leading that group. So I don't know that we would want to have our thumb necessarily on the groups,
But I think giving people the opportunity, to what you said, I think giving people the opportunity to know, okay, when can I connect? Like, give me a date and a time. You know what I mean? And then letting it go from there. But I really think it's how Pastor would want things to operate. But so that's why I think having a follow-up,
yeah.
and having him be present and how he would like it to see it started might give him the opportunity to make sure that it's done well, if it is under the umbrella of the church.
Yeah.
I think, you know, with organizing and meeting, and not giving guidelines, because it's all God's. You've got to keep out some of the guidelines. But like, I have seen groups grow. Oh, you can't come because we're at our limit.
Yeah.
Well, we're about ready to split, so come and join us, and we're seeing which way we go. I mean, like Ronnie said, you know, 12 people are kind of a max, but when you're trying to grow, you get up at that 16, and then your group discusses.
We had that happen, and we had 18 at my house there, and we talked about, we had to split. There was just no way, nobody was being, they wouldn't benefit.
That sounds more like a party, not a small group. Do you have a question?
Have those things set up ahead of time.
Oh, like kind of like training people how to handle situations like that, is that what you're saying? Yeah, I think knowing who to lean on, and so that would be leadership, I would say, in the church. But for us, like we had talked about, I had noticed as we were going through that that I felt like I was neglecting the husbands that they had at home, and I thought, okay, well, now what do I do? Because here I am, we're pouring into these women, but I'm also like, I want to do spouse stuff, and you know what I mean? Like, I want to bring them out, and I think there's a way to do it, but I think we had talked about it in one of our groups, where I realized, okay, I asked them, because again, I'm not dictator Kate here, but I asked them and I said, are you interested in growing bigger and reaching more people and making this more of like a conference kind of thing? You know what I mean? And I'm not saying big lights, all that stuff, but way more people and bringing them in and actually having speakers and doing that thing, or are you interested more in the intimate? And I had mixed from both. And so when they said they wanted to continue it being intimate, then I challenged them and I said, okay, well, if you're going to be in this group and you want to keep it small, then is there anybody here that would be interested in leading? And that's what discipleship is. You know what I mean? That's how it flows. We go from something to the next pile, to the next pile, and the next pile. And so I think that's a natural thing that would happen, but you would have to have a leader in the group like Kathy had that was willing to split, right? And go, and then you can still do stuff together, but it might not be the intimate things that you were talking about originally.
We have a question over here.
Do we currently, besides your group, have other subgroups already in place?
I believe there's one group. I don't know if they would call themselves a subgroup, and I wouldn't speak on behalf of them, but I would call what we have a small group, and that's the only one that I know of that would title themselves that way, but I might be wrong. Chelsea, do you know of any others?
Not really that would say they're a small group. I know that there are people who get together on
Right.
occasion, and even something small like that, you know, like Barb, if you get together with someone on a weekly or monthly basis, that could be a small group, and you can invite people into that, you know, so that's a good way to have them grow, you know, small little groups of people that already meet.
Right. I can guarantee there's at least 20 that's happening right now. You know what I mean?
They just
And
don't-
putting
they
a
just don't
title
realize
on
it.
it of small group. I know that my husband meets with friends that he's had for other churches, and he just brought in a young man that has kind of aged out of his youth group, and then we just brought in somebody's husband in, and it was unintentional, but they needed the same thing, and so without really paying attention, he just created a small group. So I can guarantee that there's probably 20 happening right now, but are they utilizing the resources that we have available? You know, do they know that they can reach out to help? And then most importantly, do the people that want to get connected know that they even exist?
Right.
And I think that's probably what our follow-up would be, like what Ronnie and Kathy and Sean have said, of just making sure that you know you can connect when the time comes.
All right, if we have no other questions, do we have any closing comments that you want to leave the group with? Anybody?
Well, I think that our next step, this is my feeling, is to prepare, get with the pastor and prepare formal time. Since you have shown an interest in small group, that's why you're here. And now our next step will be to prepare a place and a time for you to if it's after church on Sunday or we'll set a time, maybe we'll all come together and say, these are the groups we're going to have, this is where they're going to be located, and here you are, pick the one you want to get into, and then go from there. I think that should be the next step.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. It's also nice to know what those groups are, because when we have new people come into the church, I can have a way to plug them in somewhere, because right now I don't really have that resource when we have new people coming in, like, hey, I can plug you into this group. I don't have that, so it would be nice to have that resource available for everyone to see, so. Well,
One thing that's really nice too is if you have a group of young people with children, to know that you have teenagers in this group that you can, that's easy to do.
I've tried. Nobody wanted to make money. You were paying.
Yeah,
It ended up being John. He made $5.
all right, well, if we have no more questions, can we give a round of applause for our here? And Ronnie, would you close us out in prayer?
Father, we just thank you, Lord, for our time here today, knowing
what you want in forming and getting small groups at this church started. And help everyone, dear Lord, to find the family that would fit in their life and what they're looking for. We pray in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.